Every day we are faced with a very simple challenge: how to be productive while at the same time being responsive to the demands of our bosses, our colleagues, our clients, our customers, etc. How you balance the two will determine how productive you really are. To be productive, we need to be sitting down or standing up and quietly getting on with our work. Now, designers, writers, journalists, and people who write code are usually the people who need the most productive time. However, if you are being constantly interrupted by your boss or your colleagues or your customers, then your productivity is naturally going to drop, which means that you are being more responsive than being more productive. And this is the challenge, this is the conflict that everybody is facing every day. Now, there are certain jobs that get done where you do need to be responsive pretty much all of the day. For example, an emergency services calls operator, i.e. 911 or 999 if you're in the UK, then those people need to be responsive. The phone rings, you pick it up, and well, you probably don't pick it up, it'll be on headphones these days, but you answer the call and you deal with whatever the emergency is. Do you need the fire service? Do you need an ambulance? Do you need the police service? All these things, but you have to be in that moment when you're dealing with that particular frightened person. You need to be productive. You can't be answering questions from your colleagues. You can't be saying to your boss what you're actually doing because you're an emergency services call operator. It's a critical job, and yet you have to be responsive, but for brief moments. When you're talking to the person calling, you have to be totally focused and productive. Now, I've done many jobs in my time, and one of the most responsive jobs I've had to do was being a waiter in a restaurant. I remember as a waiter in the restaurant, I was basically running around the restaurant when it was busy, dealing with guests. When it was quieter, I'd be standing in the corner, watching body language, looking for customers or diners to look up to see if they could get me to come to them. It was 100% responsive job. I would then rush to the kitchen, get whatever they needed and come back. It was a very responsive job. Now, as a waiter, I could never have done any focused work. I couldn't restock the wine fridges. There was no way I could respond to emails. I couldn't do a stock take, not when the restaurant was open, because at that point, I had to be 100% responsive and pretty much 0% productive. However, when all the guests went away and it was kind of closing down and we were cleaning up, well, the more focused I was, the more I was on the job, cleaning up the kitchen and cleaning up the dining room, I should say, and getting it ready for the next day, the faster I could do that, which meant the more productive I was, the sooner I could go home. So in every single part of your day, you're having this conflict between, well, should I be responsive? Should I check my email? Should I check my messages? Should I actually just stop and do that proposal for this high value client? All these questions are coming to you. And this is why there's a few strategies that you can use that can really help you to get the balance between being productive and being responsive right. The first thing that you can do is to make sure that when you start the day, you keep the first 30 minutes of your workday as clear as you possibly can. It's this first 30 minutes when you want to be responsive. You can say hello to your colleagues, you can ask them what they did over the weekend, but you can also have your colleagues or your boss or whatever tell you what their urgencies are and where they need your help. This first 30 minutes gives you a heads up on the day. It gives you a chance actually just to map out your day. When are you going to do this piece of work? When are you going to do that piece of work? When are you going to take your lunch? These things can be mapped out in that first 30 minutes of your day. That first 30 minutes is total responsive time. Because what you want to do is, what I see this as is just clearing the decks. Any overhangs, anything that needs my attention, tell me now, because I can then map it out in my day as to when I'm going to do it. But at the end of that 30 minutes, you go into productive mode. Now it's the time to turn your notifications on to do not disturb. Now's the time to be able to just block out all the interruptions and distractions around you and get on with that first piece of work. Now, I would recommend to people to try and get in that early morning the 2 hours of deeper focused work. What that does is then leaves the rest of the day where you can actually do the ballet dance between being productive and being responsive. But you've done that first 2 hours of real, deep, quiet, solo work. It's amazing how much you can get done. Now, I know not every single day you will be able to do this. You might have meetings all day. Tomorrow, for instance, in my day, I've got meetings all morning and I've got meetings in the evening. The only time I've got is the afternoon to do any deeper focused work. But my task manager reflects that. I've got one piece of important work to do tomorrow. There's no point in thinking I can do 20 things tomorrow. No way. I've got 6 hours of meetings. It's not going to happen. But that's also why you should be planning the week. You can see where are my meetings and then taking the opportunity to block your calendar on certain days where you do have the time to do that deeper solo focused work. Another strategy that really works very well is to manage expectations. Now, if you're one of those people who, when they get a message, a Slack message, a Teams message, or even an email, you jump on it immediately and you respond, thinking that you're setting a good impression. Well, you are setting a good impression, but you're also setting an unrealistic expectation. There's no way that you are ever going to be able to respond to every single message that comes your way instantly. You're going to be sleeping occasionally. You might actually be meeting an important client. You might be throwing up in the bathroom. You could be on a flight where they promised you they would have Wi-Fi, and then when you get on, the Wi-Fi is not working. Why does that happen so often? Anyway, so what you've got to do is manage the expectation. Now, I usually set a rule or I have a set of rules where I have response times to all the various messages systems I have. So for instance, if I get a phone call, I will respond within an hour. It's very rare that I can answer the call in the time. If I'm walking my dog, I might be able to answer the call. But if I'm actually in a deep work session, I'm not answering the call. I'm in a deep work session. There is this thing with multitasking that if you switch your attention to something else, i.e. the phone call, it's going to be 23 minutes before I get back to the focus I was in before. I'm not going to risk that. But if I get a phone call at the end of an hour, I will reply, I will return the call. Instant messages, text messages, Slack messages, Twist as we use in our company, then it's 4 hours. I generally will respond within 4 hours. And most of the time I'm responding within an hour. Email, 24 hours. Every time. It's been like that for 10 years and I've never, ever, ever had a complaint about my email responsive time. For 24 hours, I will respond to pretty much every single email that I get. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there are occasions where it's 25 or even 48 hours. There are occasions if I'm flying to Europe, which is a 15, 16-hour flight these days, I'm not going to be responding within the 24 hours because it's just, I'm not going to put myself underneath that pressure. But on the whole, I do respond within 24 hours. These are the rules that you set yourself. You get to choose your rules. How quickly will you return phone calls? How quickly will you respond to text messages, instant messages, and so on? How quickly will you respond to emails? Now, you set those rules, but don't jump on messages instantly and reply. That's the wrong expectation to set because now everyone's expecting you to respond immediately. And that's not going to be possible. It's not sustainable. You cannot keep that going. So have a think about where your rules are for responding to the message inputs that you get. Now, if you decide to set these rules about your own responsive times, you need to communicate those with the people you work with and also your clients. Get a heads up on this. Now, I know, because I've been in sales myself in the past, that it's very tempting when you're working with a customer to say, and don't worry, you can call me anytime and I'll respond and call you back, or don't worry, I will reply to your emails and respond to your messages. You are setting yourself up for a horrible, horrible time at work. Be very clear about your responsive times. The companies that I've always felt have the best customer service are always very clear about when they are going to respond. The companies I have serious doubts about are the ones that say, when you call them up, our lines are very busy at the moment. Or usually we're experiencing above average times to respond. I'm going, whoa, this is happening all the time. That cannot be the average. What you want to be doing is you set the tone, you set the responsive times. So when you're talking to those customers or those clients, you tell them, best way to contact you is through email or message, and I will get back to you within 4 hours or within 24 hours, whatever you decide is your rules, your process, your times. You set it, get in there first and set the expectation. There may be times when you can respond immediately. I generally take a breath, go make a cup of tea or coffee, and then come back. I've learned from experience that the worst thing you can do is, even if you can respond immediately, just don't do it. Wait, pause, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. That way you're managing the expectations of the people that you're working with. But just do not, even if you can, be tempted into jumping on and responding immediately. Every day we're faced with this dance between being productive and being responsive. And it also depends on the kind of work you do. If you're a writer, if you're a journalist, for instance, or you write code, or that you design, graphic designer, you do need quite a bit of productive time each day. Now, I do hope that you have bosses that really understand that. But then if you work in sales or you work in medicine and you are a first responder, then your role is different. Your role then is to be responsive for the most part of the day. So you could be spending 6 or 7 hours a day in responsive mode and allow yourself an hour or 2 hours at the end of the day to catch up with any paperwork, admin, anything else that you need to do that's from the productive side of your work. But if you're on the other side and you need more productive time, then it's a matter of like saying, where am I going to protect time in my day so that I can be productive whilst balancing that with having some time when I can be responsive. You know, the 30 minutes before lunch and the 30 minutes after lunch are good times to be responsive, and then you can get back into doing your deeper focused work. Now, this is a balancing act. You need to try and figure out where your optimum level is, but when you do get the balance right, oh boy, do you have a much less stressful and anxious time. My wife, everybody knows, including the cleaner who comes on a Friday, knows that between 9:30 and 11:30, my office door is shut and I am doing deeper focused work. That consistency allows me to better plan my day, so I know that when I start the week, that as long as I respect my blocks, I will get the work done. That's what you're trying to do. Being able to confidently predict that you will be able to get the important work done by the end of the day. Now, if you want to learn about how to do time blocking the right way, this is the video I strongly recommend you watch next.